In this video, I'm going to talk to you about triggers and what I've learned about triggers over time. How, when you start to work with triggers and emotions, it can really enhance your life and actually help you get more of what you want, help you get your desires. And how do I know this? Well, I've been working with this for a very, very long time now, and it's worked wonders in my life. In fact, I've written about it in a Substack article that I've just done, and I've shared over there some of the questions I ask myself when I'm triggered. So, how can triggers help you? Well, they are basically a kind of broadcast, an internal broadcast. If something's happened on the external and you're receiving an emotional reaction, then that's telling you something. Let's think about it. You could go to a Christmas party, for example, and it can be your family, and there can be lots of people there, and you might find that your Auntie Betty, say for example, she's had the most amazing time. She's played with the kids there. She's got a Christmas dinner. She goes home and she tells everybody what a wonderful Christmas party this was. And then you might find that the host, that the woman who's cooked all the Christmas dinner, she's been juggling, looking after the kids. She's got a father-in-law there who absolutely triggers her and she's having to hold herself. She's juggling everything and she's not just had such a great experience as Auntie Betty. And you can find that there's somebody there who quite frankly hates children, finds it's all too much. The kids are annoying them. They're trying to watch a bit of TV or talk to somebody else. And then you've got somebody else there who absolutely loves and adores children. So this was all the same Christmas party. So what's going on there? What's going on there is lots of different internal environments, lots of people who've had completely different life experiences, and they're all meeting from a different place at the same Christmas party. So what's this got to do with triggers? Well, what might trigger one person might not trigger another. And also, emotions come from our own internal experience. And I write about that in the Substack article, which I've posted below. And my trigger this week came from my son. Now, I love my son, he loves me, and he wouldn't have known that he'd triggered me. Well, he probably does now because he might be watching this or reading my article. But he said something to me this week that hit a nerve inside of me. And he was saying what he was saying from a place of love. He was trying to help me. But the way I heard what he said hit something from my childhood. Now, just to explain that, when I was a young girl, my dad was very, very, very critical. And in fact, later in life, he told me that the reason he was critical was because he thought that it was going to drive me even further. Because in his own story, he learned how to be a painter and decorator. And while he was learning that, the lecturer told him he'd never be any good. And that drove him to do better. So my dad had this belief that if he criticized me, he would drive me to do to do even better. But unfortunately, that's not the impact it had on me. In actual fact, it had the opposite impact. And thankfully, my dad and I got a chance to talk about that whilst he was still alive. So, how can triggers help you? Well, let's take this example with my son. He said something. I was triggered. I didn't go and speak to him. I know better than that, not at the time anyway. And I knew because of the experience that I've got that if I'd had an emotional response inside, there was going to be gold in that for me. So I went away and I did a process that I've put together myself, and I examined that very trigger. I examined where it was coming from, what beliefs were still running the show inside of me. And one of them I uncovered was quite surprising, really. It was still, I'm not good enough, which I thought I dealt with already. But yes, it was still there underneath. And I was able to resolve that. I was able to look at that. And there was some gold in that for me, some different choices that I could make. And then I was able to go back, look at my son's message again, and see what he actually meant. He was actually trying to help me. Now, if you stay tuned, I'm going to dissect this a little bit further, give you a little bit more history, and explain how I turned that emotional response into gold. So, to give you some history, I left my job a long time ago and I've been setting up a business that I'm now launching called Soul Business. And it's all about doing work from a place you love, doing work from your heart and enjoying it. And my soul business is a freedom lifestyle. It's what I'm doing now. It's writing, it's philosophy, it's working with the right clients, and it's taken me, oh, at least 5 years to get to this point. And my son has watched me stumble, he's watched me fall, he's watched me buy courses, he's watched me try different things, and yeah, just literally not really getting over the line. And he was just saying to me, come on, mum, this is where I think you should go. And I saw it as, Mum, how come you fail so much? That's what happened. That wasn't the truth. So I'm going to explain this and what has actually happened in those last 5 or so years and why it's taken me this long to get to where I am today. Let's take a look at what was happening for all those years whilst I was growing my business and how it took me this long to get to where I am now and why my son's trigger was helpful to me. So if you 6 years ago, here I had a dream of having my own business. And then I went on a journey to where I am now, where I do have a business I call Soul Business. Now, first of all, the version of me down here 6 years ago, this version of me is nothing like the version of me now. In fact, my daughter once said to me that she needed to grieve me because I changed so much. It was me, but I've evolved through the years. Nothing wrong with me then. So what happened in order for me to get to where I am now? Well, I needed to face some limiting beliefs that I had. And those limiting beliefs were things like, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, people don't want to pay me. So I needed to face those and look at those. Also, I just needed to grow up as a person. I needed some skills that I didn't have now. Things like, how do I turn up on video? So video confidence. I can tell you that I did a 90-day video challenge 3 times to get this to where I am now. And the very first time, it was supposed to be 90 days in a row. It took me 2 years to do the 90 days. So I needed to develop some skills, amongst which were showing up on video and having the confidence to show up on video. I wrote a book. I learned more about finances. I knew quite a lot about business already, but I wasn't an entrepreneur as such. So I needed to learn how to be an entrepreneur, and I needed to fail forward. Now, the only way I could be where I am now was by failing, was by giving things a go, reorganizing myself and trying again. And that's part of the journey, really, learning how not to be afraid of failure. In fact, somebody who I admire very, very much, he encourages his team to fail, to not be afraid of failing. So I needed to go through a lot in order to get to where I am now. And I have to admit that during those years, I questioned myself a lot. I kept wondering, why aren't I here? What's going on? There was so much. Now let's look at why my son's trigger was really good for me. So in came the trigger. Now I had a look at how I felt. How did I feel? I felt afraid, actually. Where did that fear come from? Well, it came from childhood conditioning. Now, I write more about that over in Substack, and I also over in Substack I give exercises or questions that you can ask yourself to help you move through triggers. Now, full disclosure, that's behind the paywall, but you can read the rest of the article and you can decide whether you want to go and look at that. Just dog sitting at the moment. You could hear the dog bark in there, and I'm not going to edit it out. So, triggers. I felt afraid, and there was childhood conditioning. So, immediately, because of what I've been doing, I was able to locate the reason I feel afraid is because it's hit that old wound. Now, I came to myself, I looked internally, and I asked myself some truths. Why was I triggered? What was going on in my system? Was what I was reading or the way I thought it was coming across, was it the truth? Was there something that I needed to look at? And actually, yes, there was. And I didn't project. Now, that version of me, that one there, 6 years ago, ooh, I've somehow unrubbed myself. Literally, she did project. She kind of was addicted to drama. She thought things were other people's fault. This version of me knows better than that. So I didn't project. I held myself in that emotion. I went to the root of it. I discovered a lot about myself. And at the end of the day, I saw what my son was actually saying. I saw the truth. I wasn't looking through my lens of perception anymore. I wasn't moving from pre-conditioning. So that's how to move through triggers. Like I said, I've got some questions over in Substack that you can go through yourself. And I promise you that this is actually really quite life-changing. Why does it work? Well, the reason it works is because once you go to these emotions, once you start looking at these things that maybe you've not been willing to look at in the past, you discover things about yourself that maybe you don't want to see, but it gives you the opportunity to do something different. It gives you the opportunity to show up different. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that this is a path that is absolute magical, but it feels magical because once you do, you'll start to see that your whole external environment changes. Once you start to change in here, out there changes. So give it a go, nip over to my Substack, have a go at the questions, and I'll see you here next time with some more information.